All right, welcome back. This is the last episode for season four. I have a very good friend, Daryl Perry, with me today. Today's conversation is going to be around cerebral palsy and some of the maybe limitations or some of the mental health struggles that Daryl maybe has struggled with, and we can even center the conversation around like a broader aspect of how me and you know around the world probably might be affected with this. So um if they don't already know you, kind of introduce yourself a little bit again, because it's been a while for some of my audience.
Yeah, yeah. So, Duran, well, thank you for having me back. And you know, you and I first connected around the topic that we talk about so much, which is men's mental health. And like you, I speak from largely from my own experience and also conversations that I've had with other men. So yeah, I have a lot of different podcasts around mental health and around also mindset. Fitness is the space that I work in as well, because it's all kind of connected, how we feel about ourselves inside and out. So if you guys want to check out Daryl-Perry.com or the Daryl Perry podcast, wherever you get your podcast, I put all the episodes out on there. So that's probably the best place to go. Um, but yeah, let's see, cerebral palsy. So, in my non-medical opinion, because I get some flack, I've gotten some flack from people on that. Like, well, that's not what it is. It's like if you're coming to me for medical advice, you're in the wrong place. But the way the way that I understand it, and in my case, is I was born 3 months premature, and there's a lack of oxygen at or around birth. Um, I had a lack of oxygen. It causes some level of brain damage, and uh, every case of cerebral palsy is a little bit different. Mine, fortunately, predominantly what you see with me is that it impacts my body physically. About 80% of my body is impacted by the disability. I've got a lot of issues with physical fatigue, a lot of chronic pain, just because my body has had to kind of compensate to, like, I move around and I'm able to talk and communicate very clearly, which is not always the case. But I'm in a lot of chronic pain because of it. Now, that's the that's just like with CP, this is what the CP itself causes. I have dealt with my entire life, from the time I started in school. I was called retarded just about every single day by somebody, because people would associate physical disability and mental disability or intellectual disability. And when I was a kid, I felt like I had to. I desperately wanted to fit in, like most kids, like I think we all do. I never quite really did that. I was very shy. Communicate like I had some good friends growing up, but I dealt with a lot of bullying, what we would call it now. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so like back then, it was just like, you know, you deal with it. You either ignore it or you deal with it with your fists, and I did plenty of that. Fortunately, I hit a growth spurt when I was about 7 or 8 years old, to where I was a pretty good sized kid. That the fights I got in, I won some, I lost some, but I mean, I was in part of those, but plenty of those. But you grow up and you feel like you got to prove yourself. And for a long time, I still, because I kind of live between two worlds. I have, in the cerebral palsy community, I have what would be considered mild cerebral palsy. So it's weird, because people that are really impacted would look at me and they'd be like, well, why are you complaining? Because you're more normal, air quotes, than everybody else. But then I'm also the person that trying to fit into day to day life. You know, I usually say that like 9 out of 10 people, when they see me in public, they don't care. But people will make comments, even the questions sometimes. Like if I'm out trying to like live my life, you'll get questions from people. People will make comments, and even if it's like 1 out of 10 people collectively over the course of your life, you're having a lot of conversations around this stuff. Um, I I for a long time felt like take what you can get in the ways of work, in the ways of friendships, in the ways of relationships as an adult, and I I wanted to. I felt like there was a missing piece, so I dove into the self help stuff probably about 15 years ago or so, and I was actively looking for something that was going to make me whole, quote unquote, and it I was searching, and eventually, I started to untangle some things through therapy. As you've mentioned before, you work with a therapist. I've been working with my therapist for about 5 years at this point, on and off. We had 1 year where I was like, I didn't work with her, but I still work with her now. I actually texted her on something yesterday. Um, and it's helped me really kind of come to terms with some things. It's helped me see the value in myself. It's helped me regulate my emotions, because I feel like I didn't know for a long, like we can experience a bunch of different emotions at once, and I think for a lot of men, the one we go to once even if we're trying to connect with ourselves and realize what we feel, anger is the dominant one. And what she really helped me with was like, there's a lot of other stuff here. Like you can feel anger, but you can also feel grief and sadness and, even joy. Like there's going to be times where you have happy emotions and deep, heavy, sad ones coexisting. And it's really like I've worked on trying to really connect with really kind of work through that stuff. But I still have at times, I have to redirect my thoughts of the feeling of inadequacy, the anger and the frustration. Because I can still remember as a kid, like before I hit the growth spurt, I can remember, a kid choking me. I can remember getting hit in the back of the head with a rock, like
Mhm.
basically a big stone, and like hit me with it. It's I mean, I still and I can feel that 7 or 8 year old me still like just wanting to be accepted, wanting to be appreciated and liked. And then, as I've gotten older, wanting to be wanting to be loved and wanting to be like, loved for being me. But at the same time, because I live independently, but I know, again, with all the injuries and stuff that I have and just the pain and stuff, it's like, I don't want to be a burden on somebody. I don't want, as I get older, to be um to be um to be somebody's burden. And even when I talk about, I started a brand new life about 5 years ago. I previously was married. I was in a situation. I had a life, and I looked at it, and I'm like, this isn't it for me. Like this isn't what it should be. So then it was taking a gamble on myself and saying, I think things can be better. And in many areas, most of the time over the last handful of years, things have been better. But there's dark days, man. And sometimes I can redirect those thoughts. Sometimes I don't want to get out of bed. So,
Yeah, and sometimes, when we have physical limitations or physical disabilities,
mhm.
it does tie into our mental health. So, when like your everyday, day to day, waking up, you know, putting on your clothes, stuff like that. Obviously, I'm sure you can do all of those things, but have you ever looked at maybe your physical limitations as your weaknesses? You
it
know,
that's actually a really good thing to bring up, because last year I had, because again, I work in the fitness space, and one of the things that I always did is like I will my body to do the things it doesn't want to do. So I would throw myself at an activity, whether it was running a race or whether it was just training all the time, and say, this is what I'm going to do. Well, I'm now 40, I'm in my 40s now. So those overuse injuries, I ended up having some internal bruising on both of my ankles, and I couldn't even stand up. And because I was trying to compensate to take care of those, that led to some other lower body things. I had gotten to the point where I was actually struggling to put shoes on, and just being able um, to get up and shower. Like, I hadn't taken a bath for years, but as I went through, like, what wound up being about 9 months to like even get to where I was about 75, 80% physically, I had to start bathing. I was able to bathe, like take baths. I was able to bathe myself. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking like, and again, like those old thoughts were coming back of like, see, this is why I'm not worth it. This is why I'm not, you know, worthy of the affection, the attention, and the love that I want. Because look at me, I am a burden. Like those are the kind of thoughts that you kind of fight. But yeah, I mean, there's struggles with that for sure for me sometimes.
Yeah, and our sometimes our physical limitations can be our strongest assets. And when you go around, like when you are out in the world,
Mhm.
obviously you're going to get maybe dirty looks or people that's going to talk about you. But what's some of the positive things?
Yeah, yeah.
What's some of the
So
positive things that came from your physical
so
limitation?
one of the things for me, you look at the situation you're in, and I think what you said is absolutely true. You try to look at your situation, and if you can find something that many people would look at as a negative and turn it into a positive. For me, the going into I always I gravitated towards working out. I had a physical therapist and an orthopedic doctor that was just like, hey, this would be really good for your body if you can really get into this. And I took to it. He actually, I was a teenager when he recommended this, and it was kind of to supplement the physical therapy that I was doing. Um, so I gravitated towards working out, and that became something that, yes, people would look, but people were also inspired by. And so what I ended up doing is I've worked in the fitness industry on and off since college, so going back over 20 years. And then I also went to school for marketing, worked in marketing and advertising. So this entire time, I have this entire approach to health and fitness in my life that I position in a way to where people can feel comfortable in their own skin, and really do this stuff not just for the look, but for better quality of life, for as long as like as long as you're active, the better quality of life you're going to have. So I have been able to turn this into something that this is the work that I do. So I now, and you know, I put this message out. I do a lot of stuff around fitness, mindset, men's mental health, which we talk a lot about. And I've created this entire ecosystem, this entire business, this entire brand, this entire life around what would be a perceived weakness. But like anything else, there's layers to this, right? Like there's levels to this. So I definitely, I talk to you about some of the layers underneath, some of the struggles that I do have, because I'm not like, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too. That may or may not be true. But there's also a lot of positives, and I wake up every day and I am grateful for the life that I have and the opportunities that I have.
Yeah. So, um, let's talk about like maybe some of the, mental health challenges that maybe
Yeah.
comes with cerebral palsy. What are some of your everyday to day thoughts like?
Um, the day to day, it's like, well, anytime I get an injury, like, is this it? Like, am I going to be debilitated for life? And that might sound like an exaggeration, but if anybody listening has a physical limitation, losing your freedom, losing your mobility is one of your biggest fears. So that's part of it. And again, I'll have my moments where, um, I appreciate who I am, but there's other times I'm like, I wish I just didn't have to deal with this. So yeah, but those can be day-to-day thoughts. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know you post a lot of like motivations on your, Daryl Perry, Instagram because I
Mhm.
follow it.
Yeah.
Um, what's some of the positive feedback that maybe you got back from some of the people that some of your followers? Like, oh man, this is awesome. I go
Yeah.
through this. Like, what's some of the positive feedback that you feel that keeps you going in life?
I I feel like when I do content, whether we're talking social media, whether we're talking podcast, whether we're talking any of it, those comments where people are like, "I really needed to hear this today," and that that to me, because I think when you can connect with people on a slightly different level, that a deeper level than I can do it, you can do it too. But when you say like my underlining message on my content is you can do it, you're gonna figure it out. You may feel like you're behind right now, you might feel like the deck's stacked against you, but a lot of what I put out is just to remind people, look, you're capable of whatever it is you want to do, you're going to figure out how to do it. It may not look the way that you think it's going to look. It's certainly not going to go the way you think it's going to go. I think any of us that try something new figure that out real quick, but like you can do it. So the best messages for me are just like I needed to hear this today or thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, that's always interesting to hear positive feedback because, not everything on social media is, bad. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of good positive people um in the world that actually do care about some of our causes that we, say online and stuff like that. I remember I had another guy that was talking about his limitations when he
Yeah.
was in college. I forget what his name was, but he was on my show
Yeah.
and he talked about his mental he talked about his because he had an IEP and
Sure.
his was more on the mental side and not the
Yeah.
physical side. So it was always interesting to follow up and how and ask people like physical and mental health is so strongly connected together that people don't realize that it really is. Like, you can't if I'm not physically well, then I don't feel mentally well, right? Or vice versa. If I'm not mentally well, then that can translate to me being physically unwell, right? Um, so when you talk about like some of your challenges,
Mhm.
what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome in your mind,
Yeah.
in terms of cerebral palsy?
Yeah. So I think actually you just hit one of them on the head, which is when when we're hurting, whether that's physically and or mentally, um, it really changes our entire demeanor. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there hurting. And again, kind of going back to what I was saying about working through the layers of emotions that you have, is that when you're struggling mentally or physically, that's where you really get to see where you are with things. Because I think all of us, when things are going good for us, I think we're pretty like we're cheering for others. We see the big picture. We're not focused on the negative. But the real challenge is when things are bad, when you are in pain, when you are hurting, whether that's through, a loss of a friendship, a loss of a family member, the end of a relationship, or a physical injury, or a mental illness, which you and I recently had a conversation on. That shows who you like, where you are. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means this is how you currently respond to hurting, which also means you can work to get better. But as far as the mental challenges, it's what's really hard when you do start to lean in and say, okay, I'm not like everybody else, disability or otherwise. I'm not like everybody else. I'm going to find my own path. And then you start to do it. It's interesting because you still will second guess yourself at times. I think what helps is being able to, again, like redirect these thoughts. Doesn't mean you're not going to have them, because we're always, I think the stuff that happens to us at every stage of life, going back to childhood, sticks with us. It's, are we at a point where we can look at it and be essentially the person that we needed back then in our life? And I think if we're able to do that, it's easier for us to redirect. So, but yeah, I have the thoughts probably every day, and if I think about it, it's just trying to redirect them. And sometimes I'm better at it than other days, and sometimes I feel like I've gone 2 steps forward and then I go 3 steps back. And I think when something like that happens,